Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor, and today we are going to be talking about the Lauren Southern and Serfs debate recap with me, one of the participants, Connor, or Counterpoints. So I'm assuming that some of you are going to be new, some of you are going to be old. Either way, I wanted to take advantage of the momentum for you guys coming in to kind of break down what happened with that debate from my perspective, and also to give you a little bit about me if you don't know anything and haven't checked out the channel yet. So, from an interior perspective, I'm not going to lie, that debate was pretty rough. I've been doing Twitch.tv political debates for probably between like 6 months and a year now, and I've been on YouTube for the better part of a year and a half, 2 years. And that was a rough debate. I'll put it there. I don't want to be impolite to anybody. The highlights, but also the low parts of the debate for me were freaking out on twin rabbits because basically, I'm not gonna lie, it was emotionally cathartic to yell at twin rabbits, but at the same time, I would have preferred if I had a debate opponent or debate partner where we could have talked about words and concepts, agreed on a working definition, and then continue the discussion. If it seemed like I was frustrated in that conversation, especially with the first half hour to an hour, it was because we couldn't build any kind of consensus and move forward because people were arguing about things that I ultimately thought were either silly, or if they weren't silly, then they were things that we could probably get into some kind of like working compromise and then talk about the bigger picture. And if there's anything I regret about that debate, it's the fact that we couldn't even get to the bigger picture because of the combative nature and the nature of the opponents. We weren't able to really make it too far, which is frustrating. Just to, for those of you who are new here and are unfamiliar with my personality, my anger is real. My frustration is real. What you're hearing from me is what I'm thinking. It's not some 5D chess move manipulation thing in order to get you to think what I want you to think. It's what I'm thinking in the moment. Part of the reason why I hesitate to have my own chat during live debates is because I actually just want to give you my unvarnished, unfiltered, unsolicited, maybe not unsolicited, but my unmuddied opinion on a subject. And I also just want to engage with people in the room. I don't want to be distracted by chat. I don't want people booing my perspectives and then, oh, maybe I need to reel that back in, or maybe cheering my perspectives. Oh, the audience loved that. Let's do it harder. No, I don't want to be tainted in that way. Not to hate on anybody who isn't tainted by their own audience, but for me, that's a concern of mine. I always want to give you what I'm thinking, not what the zeitgeist of my community is thinking. So how did Lauren Southern and I do? We did okay. I know the consensus is that we did really well, but we did okay. And the things that I was frustrated on was basically getting boiled down into the GPR minutia. I can blame the other side for basically like hacking into, oh, well, I can't find this lady's name, so clearly she had nothing to do with the study. Why would Lauren lie about a fact that's so necessary to all of her ensuing points? And then also, what frustrated me about like the discussions about like technology or study or anything like that is that it ultimately doesn't matter. The TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for basically Native American Affairs in Canada at this point, they've already researched and figured out that roughly 4,000 to 6,000 kids died in the residential school system. Whether or not this specific gravesite is one of those grave sites is kind of irrelevant to the actual historical narrative corroborated by other facts. So why are we bogging down on a technical dispute between the two sides over what we know? And the reason, and I understand Lauren's perspective, and I also understand the strategy, which is basically we don't know what we know about these specific grave sites, and these grave sites are the trigger for the church burnings. That's why it's relevant to the conversation, while maybe not being something that I'm interested in talking about. So when you saw me trying to communicate to Lauren and trying to communicate to Twin and trying to communicate to Lance and trying to get everybody on the same page, I'm not trying to like dismiss their perspectives or call them assholes or or basically minimize what's going on. What I am trying to do is I'm trying to find some level of agreement so we can move forward conceptually on the things that are more important. Which actually brings me to the quote-unquote conceding of mass graves. So unfortunate for me, I really wish, maybe I'm too deadpan of a person, maybe sarcasm doesn't come across. I was absolutely being fucking sarcastic because at that point I did not give a shit what we called mass graves. Everything that I asserted, like relatively meekly, when I assert something meekly and I'm like, hey, this is just my understanding of it, I'm soliciting agreement because I feel like what I'm saying is obviously true. So I'm not coming at you with a combative definition because I want you to buy into what I'm saying. And I felt like my definition of mass graves is pretty culturally normal for what people would consider with that definition and that word set. But not even getting the concession from Twin or from Lance was kind of frustrating, not going to lie. So in order to move the conversation into something that's more productive or appropriate, especially considering the subject matter, I just wanted to concede the word in the conversation, not in my mind, because I know what mass graves means. I know the definition. I know the cultural impact of it. But let's accept your definition so we can move forward in the conversation into something more productive. And unfortunately, that just wasn't on the table in this debate, which was frustrating. And then when I told Lauren, this confused both Dylan and Destiny. That's how I know I didn't communicate this idea properly. When I told Lauren that she couldn't take back the definition of mass graves because I had already conceded it, I wasn't appealing to some 5-head, 10-head, like Harvard point system of like conceding definition. I don't give a shit. This is a debate. This is a conversation. I don't care. I was literally joking, hoping that she and the audience would know that I had moved on from that perspective and I just didn't give a shit anymore. So I don't actually concede the definition mass graves. I was literally just trying to move the conversation forward. So that's kind of frustrating. So there was what we could have done in that conversation, and when I say we, I mean Lauren Southern and I. What we could have done is we could have poked holes in like the definition of genocide, and we could have poked holes in the definition of cultural genocide, and we could have poked holes in the official narrative, and do we trust this person and that person, and here's this, exaggeration, and here's a story that doesn't work, and here's this blah blah this and this blah blah that. But the historical consensus seems pretty clear to me, which is that this did happen. Canada did commit a cultural genocide. Within the realm of American colonization, this is awful shit, but it's also definitely not the worst thing that's happened on this continent. And that's not saying that these things aren't awful. That's saying that if you look at history, there's so much nefarious shit, especially when you just go back a few centuries. So it's actually really easy for me to concede historical fact that seems to be appealed to consensus. But we could have, for the sake of a debate, which I would have found gross, we could have like fought in this like weird, describing like a Mott and Bailey. I believe a Bailey is a more defensible position and a Mott is a less defensible position. We could have fought in the Mott of, is this genocide? Is this cultural genocide? And fuck that. Let's just let history be history, and let's allow the people who actually study history aggressively to define what that is. Because guess what? I haven't read a 10,000 page treatise on Native American history pre and post colonial. There are probably people who have read and wrote those books. Let them tell us what happened, right? So the frustrating part of that is, so if Twin Rabbits and Lance were coming in expecting either myself or Lauren Southern to defend or deny genocide, they didn't get it. And that was the frustrating thing, was we got boiled down in minutia and then kept accusing Lauren primarily, but me by proxy, of denying historical reality. And I don't think, while Lauren engaged in more like technical criticism, I don't think I denied a fucking thing. As a matter of fact, I pretty much read the Truth and Reconciliation report and I repeated it out loud and even corrected their perspective of the narrative. So, don't really know what to do with that except for try to move on. And then the frustrating thing for me during the conversation was Lance instantaneously backed off of the church burning point, which was the main reason why I was there, because I don't care how fucked up the 19th century or early 20th century was. You don't get the Molotov cocktails, churches in this present day and age. There are a whole bunch of parallels for why this would be messed up. And not only that, a decent chunk of the churches, based off of research that we conducted in preparation for this debate, were not related to the residential school system at all. And that was one of the points that I didn't even get to bring up because they ran away so quickly from the church burning topic that we didn't even get to bring up the fact that 2 of the churches that were burned One of them was the Church of Vietnam War Refugees. So obviously nothing to do with the Canadian residential school system because they didn't come over until the 1970s, and even then they had nothing to do with the government at that point. And then number two, an Egyptian Coptic Christian church. Another series of war refugees, people of color, people that the lefties, the progressives would ostensibly care about. They were also victims of these vandalisms. So seeing Lance run away from that, and then Twin Rabbits or whatever shitpost about Catholic priests burning down their own churches, that was pretty frustrating. Yeah, we'll leave it there. How the other side did. So one of the things that was like a little frustrating, and from like a debate standpoint, ultimately we're talking about like rape and murder and genocide. So I don't like dancing on ha 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 ha, we did such a good job in the fucking debate. We're talking about like rape, murder, and genocide. Let's treat the subject with some level of seriousness. But one of the great missteps that I felt was done by the other side was basically thinking that 40 to 60% of the deaths, or that out of the 150,000 students who participated in the residential school system, 40 to 60% of them died. I think that would be akin to a Holocaust. I think that would be akin to Nazi ethnic cleansing. But that's not what happened. And this isn't to, like I've said this in the debate, I'll say it again here. This isn't to minimize what happened. This is to be descriptively accurate so we know what we're talking about. And this was the whole point about the conversation, was in order to know, like, retributive justice, in this case would be the church burnings. In order to mete out retributive justice, you have to know what you're responding in kind for retribution. And the fact that people who are very passionate about this subject, who basically base a lot of their advocacy around the subject, the fact that even they did not know or misunderstood absolutely relevant facts to the historical narrative of what's occurred here was pretty frustrating. I'm happy we won the debate point, but if you're coming at me saying like we need to study this history, no, motherfucker, you need to study this history. I read the history. I'm paying attention. I'm reading the stats. I know how to critically think. You need to read the history so you know what you're talking about. Weird. I know. Anyways. Oh my God. So the frustrating thing about that was that I could absolutely see how Lance's narrative that he had told himself that was backed up by Twin Rabbits would stochastically cause criminal vandalism and arson. So them not understanding those details, and propagating the information that they propagate, I think absolutely contributes, and people like them absolutely contributes to church burnings and vandalism, which is supposed to be a moral horror. But again, Twin Rabbits doing that weird shit, was really bugging. So I have two more things to do before I let you guys go. Number one, my association with Lauren Southern. My association with Lauren Southern, we did a documentary together. It was about law enforcement. I was a participant in that documentary, and basically I talked about law enforcement as it presently exists, the emotional toll that it takes on law enforcement officers, the physical toll it takes on law enforcement officers, and did an interview about my experiences and all that kind of stuff. This was after Lauren had come back and made her, I'm coming back, and ostensible shift to the center, which appealed to me, and also the BLM riots and the, how do I phrase this? Police reform was front and center in the national conversation, so I saw it as my opportunity to contribute to that narrative in a positive way. I don't think anything that I said was used negatively, but I would say that probably the first hour and 15 minutes and the last 20 minutes are my favorite parts of the documentary because they focus on law enforcement, and I think they're very accurate and very good. The middle 45 was kind of, it bought into the political binary, and it bought into basically BLM doesn't know what it's talking about, and it's probably done more harm than good, and then Antifa are a bunch of fucking monsters. And for me, that's not the messaging that's actually going to de-escalate this conflict and be solution-oriented, which is something that I care about more. Now, that being said, I don't hold it personally against Lauren, but we might have deferred politically in what we were trying to achieve with that documentary, and that's totally fine. My perspective on indigenous issues, minority issues, LGBTQ issues, but specifically black issues in the United States, black American issues in the United States, is there is a metaphorical horse and cart in a ditch in this country when it comes to race relations. And we can sit on the side of the road and we can argue, hey, and bear in mind this is a metaphor involving no people, okay? Or involving no one is the horse and no one is the cart. The horse and cart are race relations, okay? We can argue that the horse drove itself into the ditch. The horse's fault. You know, they ran into the ditch. So fuck, you know, the horse. Other people can say it's the cart. The cart is overloaded. The cart dragged the horse into the ditch. It didn't have the proper safety equipment, this, that, the other. When really what we should be doing as Americans is saying there's a horse and a cart in a ditch. It needs to be on the road. Let's get down there and start pushing. And that's what I want to do, because I think that our politicians, our pundit class, and even our alternative media class, they profit off of standing in the crowd and just bickering and finding the most 10-head way to bicker about this problem. When what we should be doing is figuring out the smartest way to get back on the fucking road and then get back on the road. I understand that's like a wild concept, but that's how I feel and that's how I want to advocate. Weird. I know. Weird. As far as like Lauren personally, you know, I think she has evolved on a few issues. We could talk about that another day. But basically, I think having a family has changed some of her perspectives, and for me, for the better. I think she has shifted a few things. And while everybody else can, you know, grab their torches and pitchforks, I don't really give a fuck. It's not my job. I don't give a shit about that. My job is to open the door for the far right and for the right wing in general to adopt a more healthy right wing perspective, which of course mine is the healthiest right wing perspective, right? So, what I would want is I would want a like a legalistically libertarian society, but a cultural promotion of conservative values. What I mean by that is if people don't fit into the mold of conservative values, then they are free to pursue their life to the fullest extent as enshrined in our Constitution and American culture. But there are obvious advantages to serial monogamy, monogamy in general, two-parent households, you know, intergenerational families, helping them raise their kids, caring about church, caring about community, caring about your society, caring about truth, caring about all these things that I know are not supposed to be the right wing, but let's face it, a lot of them are. And there are people on the left who will argue against these things, even if you're like, I'm a leftist and I love these things, or I'm a liberal, progressive, and I love these things. Let's face it, there's plenty of assholes on the left who don't like any of those things, and they view it as a box to be shoved into. I am probably closest in personal philosophy related to Jordan Peterson. By that, I mean, like, I do want some level of like systemic support for people, but I also think that your best advocate is yourself. I also think that conceptualizing yourself as an agent for your own change is really good. I think that you know, cleaning your room, reading books, looking at what you can control and what you can't control, and then basically making decisions and doing things yourselves. I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to save you. Okay, so you can vote for fucking Bernie Sanders for the next 20 or 30 years. You're probably better off cleaning your own room, getting your shit together, taking a shower, and getting a job and working your ass off and providing for your people. That's probably better than waiting for some politician to save you. If possible, right? I'm also a fan of constitutional republicanism, and I absolutely distrust democracy. I think the average person is a fucking asshole and an idiot. Now, they can be well-intended, and they can be good people, but they're an asshole and an idiot. And I consider myself an asshole and an idiot. And, yeah. Also, among these, like, right-wing ideas, I think the Founding Fathers were pretty fucking smart and knew what they were doing. I think that if they invented a constitutional solution for a problem and that problem hasn't gone away, then there's no sense in reform or abolishing of a constitutional amendment. I think guns are very important for personal security and civic stability. I think controlled immigration and civic nationalism are awesome. And by civic nationalism, I mean that there should be half a dozen to a dozen principles that make us American. And we should say, hey, if you want to live these principles, then you can come here. And if you don't want to live these principles, you can get the fuck out. Obviously, we can't kick out people who are already here. But if you want to come here and you're coming from someplace else, I have no problem enforcing American principles on strangers and forcing them to integrate. No problem at all. Families are important, and mild economic redistributivism with a minimizing perverse incentives is important. What I mean by that is I think there's a few things that government needs to control. Food security is one of those things. Subsidizing food is fucking base to make sure that everybody is able to get food onto their plate for cheap. I think that personal security is also very important. Law enforcement, firefighters, EMT, all that kind of stuff. Those are all things that should be done by the government as well as the military. That's all fucking awesome and needs to be controlled by the government. And then social programs that promote wellness, like K through 12 or even pre-K through 12, and then also secondary education. I think that should be within the government's purview. I also think healthcare should be within the government's purview. Not because I'm some big statist, but because I want to bulldoze the obstacles that get in the way of healthy, happy, productive American life. And I want to make it so every single person in this country, even if they're born to a crack-addled, drug-addicted single mother, has a real shot at success. People can bootstrap, but not everybody can bootstrap. So we have to give them the opportunity to bootstrap. And that's what I think is important. I also think religion is a necessary ethical framework. While I'm not specifically religious, I am a perennialist, which means that I think that every single religion contains truth. That when you chip away at that truth and you hold on to that, if it's true in all of the religions, or if it's true in one religion, or if it's true in one region, and then it continues to apply and apply and apply, throughout history, then that thing is just true. And that's humans' flawed attempt at chipping away at the face of God and morality and spirituality. And that's what I believe. So I don't know if there's an afterlife, but that's just a personal thing. And then my goal, just to be honest with you guys about what my goal is to ultimately fuse the socially liberal and libertarian views of the Libertarian Party, where you're not going to shit on LGBTQ folk or minorities just because you fucking feel like it. So to be a little bit socially liberal and libertarian, but then also get the communitarian and conservative ethic promoted culturally. And what I mean by that is all of the previous beliefs that I've highlighted of the things that I think create a healthy and happy and stable society. I don't think those are things that you can be liberal or libertarian about. Now, maybe the government shouldn't be enforcing those on people, but you absolutely should have a cultural promotion for it. And that's what I do. I culturally promote these values, and I would advocate that if you feel the same way that I do as well, you do it as well. Now, don't go to your liberal, progressive, LGBTQ, meth and heroin addicted neighbor and just start poking your finger in their face and tell them that they're a fucking piece of shit and they're going to hell and they can go fuck themselves and all that kind of shit. Instead, keep an open hand and say, hey, listen, you're living your life as best you can, but I think these are the ways in which you're fucking up. If you ever need help, I'm here and I want to show you the way. And this is the way that I think is incredibly good. And this is the way that I'm going to live with my family. And, basically, please, if you ever need help, let me know. And then that way we can show through love and care and all that kind of stuff that we do. And by this, I mean some of the social conservative aspects that I advocate for. We do have a better way. And we do have a way that would lead to a healthy, happier, better life. So that would be my perspective. So don't be a dick. Do good things and don't do bad things. Mind-blowing philosophy, I know. So, what I would say here is I bamboozled you. I'm done. Okay? So I used the Lauren Southern debate post-cap. That way you guys were interested in drama and all that kind of stuff. And I just fed you my personal philosophy as an introduction and primer into this channel. I do science fiction breakdowns. I'm a big fan of Warhammer 40,000. I'm less of a fan of other series, but I'm going to do them anyways just for shits and giggles. I am a big fan. I am a Marine Corps veteran, so I do talk about military stuff. I am a law enforcement veteran, so I do talk about law enforcement stuff. I'm a politics nerd, so I do talk about politics stuff. I'm a philosophy and religion nerd, so I talk about all that kind of stuff. So I've already created a lot of great content. All the content is going to be about equal and quality, so if you like this video or if you like other videos that I've done, reactions, breakdowns, whatever, there's already shitloads of content. Go check it out. Go click it. Go like it. Go subscribe. Go comment. Go do all that kind of crazy shit. And then if you don't find anything that tickles your fancy, then just leave your subscription. Okay, because it helps me metrically and it gives me, basically credence in the social media cloud space. So, I take hate subscriptions. Leave your hate subscription. I won't complain. So, like, share, subscribe, dislike, all that YouTube nonsense. I sincerely appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.